Hello, I'm Kevin Schuker and this is QUEST.TV. I'm here with Colin Andrews, who just gave a remarkable lecture here this afternoon on crop circles and their influence and understanding that we can bring to our lives. So, Colin, as a fellow Englishman, it's great to have some sophistication here in New York City.
I feel almost as if I'm home.
Oh, yeah, it's a wonderful feeling. And I know you're from Andover, and how did you originally come to be interested, or what happened to you in order to spark your imagination with crop circles?
Yeah, it happened very suddenly. I was, at the time, this is back in 1983, July 1983, I was a senior official in regional government, central southern England, and I was on my way to a meeting. I was on high ground, alone in the vehicle, and on the way to Petersfield in Hampshire from Andover, from an office I had there. And I looked down, I was on high ground, I looked down to the left, and in an amphitheatre, a natural kind of valley, was a set of 5 circles, which I've shown today here in New York, forming a cross. And I could see from the car that, or at least I could see, I couldn't see any tracks from the car. I stopped, I walked down into the field, I was late for my meeting, and I got to tell you, it grabbed me as an engineer from that moment, because I walked out into this field, and it took me probably 20 minutes to get right out there. You know, it's always bigger when you're on the ground than what it looks like from the hill. And I walked into this open area suddenly, there it was, and this flattened area, which was a single circle with 5 smaller circles around it, and the plants were still, I could hear them, the plants were kind of popping where they were trying to lift back up. It gave me very much the impression as to, however it had arrived there, it had only just happened. That's what I thought, because I could hear it still moving as if it was trying to get back, you know, come back up to natural. And it hooked me in. I mean, I could see that the only tracks in the field were my own. I looked around and there I was behind me. It really, it pressed all the buttons, the buttons.
And I know this is a worldwide phenomenon, but it seems to have got most of its exposure, or early exposure, within England. It seems to be a hotbed of this type of activity. Do you have any insight as to why this would have started there, or any kind of like why England in particular seems to have more crop circles than anywhere else?
Well, my whole approach has been scientific. I mean, I've certainly tried to. I do also try to think laterally, because if science can't account for it after 26 years, one needs to start to test some other boundaries. But yeah, I mean, looking at all the data, there are around about 11,000 reports in the database that I have here now in Connecticut that came from Andover, back in Hampshire. The vast majority, we're looking at 96 and a bit percent of the world's total of this 11,500 appear within 40-mile radius of Stonehenge. And now the question being, as you have rightly asked, why there? Well, one thing we can say for certain, there's a lot we cannot say for certain, is that the geology of this particularly well-defined area, 40 miles radius is not a lot when you're looking at a planetary phenomenon, but this area, its carbostructure, so its geology, is chalk. And chalk is fossilized life. It contains vast amounts of water, underground water. There are reservoirs under there, millions and billions of gallons that are moving with the environment. They're moving with climate. So I would just put that out as a powerful correlation. But I would also add, we cannot overlook the fact that the vast majority of them, including the more complex designs, are very close to archaeological sites. Now, there's always many answers to every question. It's like, well, okay, if people are making them, and we know people are making some, they're making a lot of them, that they would locate them in a place where they are able to identify them as eerie and mystical, because if they're close to Stonehenge, it kind of has a flavour. So we're open to all of that, but I can only say that I get a sense that the focus of man in the past and the focus that we're pulling back in again now from society in this quest for a spiritual rooting and understanding of who we are has already existed in England. It's been there. Stonehenge is thought to have been one of those very centres, and it is the centre still of this same phenomenon. I mean, the ratios of the actual designs are precisely the ratios of Stonehenge. It isn't common knowledge, but it's a statistical fact. So it kind of leaves a lot of possibilities as to possibly why it's there.
It does, and I always sort of associate the British Isles as having a strong or long history of interest in ley lines and lines of energy. Do you see that in any way interacting with these circles?
That's a great point. In fact, it's one that I didn't cover today because there is so much to talk about. But yeah, this has been very much in the equation. I had in my office before we did media and since we did media, we'd stick in at each. As the years came by, we would have, well, I'll give you an example. Here's the starting point. 1983, probably a dozen reports. So in would go the pins for the locations, each coloured the same. So there would be that number of red pins. The following year, a few more. In go the yellow pins. And slowly but surely, we saw a pattern evolving. And so this was either, if we're in human terms, either a conspiracy, a planned conspiracy with an ultimate aim, which we do not believe it to be the case, because there was a pattern to this. There was an evolving clustering which formed eventually, over many years, an equilateral triangle between Winchester in Hampshire, Warminster and Wiltshire, and Wantage in Oxfordshire. And that was a 41.5 mile along each leg equilateral triangle. But within that area, these designs were on alignments on what we would call ley lines. So, yeah, the ley lines are in here. The dowsers, who I personally have employed a lot of them. I'm a dowser myself, but I think we all are. You know, the dowsing rods that detect the ley line are the dowsing rods that detect the boundaries of the circles and these bands that are within them. Also detect the fact that they are on ley lines. So, you know, ancient man placed his churches and his spiritual centres, Stonehenge and others, Avebury, Silbury Hill, on these ley lines, and so are the crop designs. So yes, they're definitely in the equation, whatever they actually are.
That's I find that fascinating. I really do. And also the other part of it that really captures my imagination, from the research I've seen and some of the things I've read from your work, that the crops themselves at the base, they're kind of damaged. I know we've seen these people out there with bits of wood and they're Dave and I forget their names. Doug and Dave.
I'll never forget their names.
No, I mean they should have. I'm surprised they haven't got a reality show. But
give them time.
But at the base, we have this almost biochemical change in the grasses themselves. How do you see that? Is that an explosive force, or is it a degrading force, or how do you explain that phenomenon?
Well, I'm not a biologist, but I've worked with biologists, and I would repeat to you what I am told. And what I am told is that we're looking at a low level, a very brief burst of microwave energy that changes the plants at the cellular anatomic level, that creates a plant, changes a plant from one that has a structure which has to be capable of supporting a vertical plant to one that now is made supple at right angles and then reconstitutes in a new position. So those are cellular changes that have taken place. I think scientifically that's probably as far as we can go. There are many other ideas as to what might be involved outside of that as a function.
I see. And I guess sort of wrapping up here, I know you gave a fantastic lecture, and I know how you can surmise it into sort of like a quick sentence, but if you had a feeling inside yourself that there was a message here, you know, that deep feeling that you have, what would you say that message is? Is it possibly is it warning us? Is it educating us? Is it guiding us? What do you feel for yourself with so much knowledge in this area? How do you feel?
Well, if I may just say that's a key and a great question, because intuition, what we feel, is, as Edgar Mitchell has said, it's our first sense.
Yeah.
And I agree with him. What you feel is not always what science is able to deal with or can actually demonstrate. What I feel, and I can speak to you easily on, I feel it. I have felt the awe-inspiring nature of the phenomenon. I've had personal experiences, not all of which I've spoken to today. Right. There are other things that I feel to say at some point that I just don't feel that now is the time, right. Not in a kind of dramatic sense, that I don't feel comfortable about talking some of the more bizarre aspects of it. Yes, I have only one. There is one very strong feedback here from personal experience to what I see as families of information set within the many patterns, some unique, that we have got, and that is that the planet itself, it is nature, it is the planet itself, is in tremendous difficulty. And what we are looking at here is Mother Earth. Mother Earth is, its life support systems are gravely being challenged, and that we as one of, if not the, most responsible species on the planet have not been playing the right cards. We have responsibilities that we have failed in, and whether there is enough time to re-steer the ship is better brains than mine. We'll address that. But I do feel, and others do agree, that we are at the 11th hour, and we have little time left for the semantics, the arguments, the disagreements, the egos. We are in a position here where we have to identify at our soul level who we are, what we're here to do, to achieve, and to find within us the love that can bond us and can produce a better product of ourselves and for other living species. Okay. That's the message. I see it constantly, and all of the family lines, perhaps we can talk about on another occasion, that will support that simply in the evolution of the design. Right. So that's the best shot I can give.
So do you see these things as a communication tool almost? It's almost.
Yeah,
yes. Do you think we've deciphered them, or we're close to deciphering them?
I think we know what they are. I really do. I don't think that it's going to be totally necessary to spell out this means this, that means that, and therefore the trend is this, and this is ultimately the message. I think the feelings, the experience people have gotten, and some are specific. Right. We have a solar system, an absolute replica, a tremendous accuracy, with the Earth missing at a known date. Now that's work that we've done with scientists in this country that define a date and what it possibly means, that the planet will not be here at this date if something doesn't happen. Right. So. I think it's as much as we can say right now. Right. You know,
and I guess, is the crop cycle phenomenon, is that a recent type of phenomenon? Because I grew up in England too.
Sure.
And I don't know when you were first aware of the crop circles. Perhaps for me it was perhaps the late 70s, early 80s.
79.
Yes, yep. Perhaps something like that.
You were obviously aware of it right
now,
at the beginning.
What... were there possibly crop circles going on before that, but we're not documented, or do you think this is a very recent phenomenon?
I personally think it is recent. In the folklore, English folklore, 1678, we have found something referred to as the Hartford mowing devil, and it does appear to be reference to a historic record to a crop circle. Right. It appears to be that. There are no photographs. We can only surmise that the words are relating to it. Right. It may not be. What I can say is that actually I said 78 just now, but in 76, a farmer just north of Winchester in Hampshire reported seeing a single circle and took a photograph of it. That is the first that I am aware of, documented photographic evidence. There's the beginning. And that from that time onwards, tends to support it as being the first, is the documentary evidence from farmers, aircraft, some military people from the sky, and then us joining in this from 83, an absolutely continuous record of an evolving phenomenon. But 76 seems to be the starting point. There will be, I know there are people that have argued with that there is another record. Right. I would say if we're looking at solidity, that's the date. and we can leave the book open to an earlier
And
time.
you must get excited every time the autumn and the fall comes around when you must be ready to go out and see it. Do you think there's also a relationship between the fall, the harvest, the maturing of these plants, and possibly the energy that comes through at that time? Or is it just that during the fall, the harvest, that's the best time that crops can be affected by this? Is there a seasonal component to it also?
There is a seasonal component in all countries where they appear, but it doesn't seem to be, and this is again only my opinion, based upon I've travelled the world looking at it in Australia and Canada, here, back in the UK obviously, and in other places, Brazil and so on. What I see is that this phenomenon, whatever the mechanism is, requires a drawing board. And the drawing board, as it happens, is the cereal crop. It has to be a plant in excess of 5 or 6 inches in height. Okay. Well, that could be grass, and we do have them in grass. Right. Cereal crop provides, in a known period of time, between late April, May in England, and of course that varies in different parts of the world in Australia, but there is a season in which a drawing board is made available. We have to return to these fields as opposed to grass fields around the planet that we don't see from one year to the next. We go back to cereal crops because we eat it. And in the eating of the cereal, we have the plant.
I always sort of see it like, that little wheat shaft is almost like a little antenna that has the seed at the top that could be a resonator almost, and that resonation is more pronounced through those type of crops than perhaps any others. I don't know if anybody's ever...
Resonance and frequency is in here. We've just been showing that the sounds that have been recorded at 5.2 kilohertz, there is a consistent frequency component to this, which translated as ultrasound, that may well have some relationship in its effective application through the antenna that you're referring to.
That's what I'm saying. So I can see this like a wheat sheaf wobbling there and then perhaps bursting with energy and toppling over. I don't know.
We welcome you aboard the research.
Perhaps we should get together. Well, thank you so much, Colin. It's a wonderful, wonderful life of research. And how can people contact you? Give us your website again.
Thank you. The website is www.colinandrews.net, and as of tomorrow morning, we will be releasing the entire database through PDF down files or whatever. Obviously, the books and all the rest of it are out there. But we're really keen because there has been a rebooting of the research surrounding consciousness, that this is the first of a whole series which will take us throughout the world. And I really think this is where it is, and we've got a narrow window of change.
And if people take pictures this fall, they can send them to you. They'll all go up on the website and everything like that.
Let's all be part of it.
Exactly.
We've all got part to play.
I understand. It sounds great. Sounds like a reality show coming your way soon, coming this fall, perhaps on QUEST.TV. It's been an honor, sir, and thank you again so much.
Pleasure.
I'm Kevin Shuker.
Thanks, Kevin.
This is QUEST.TV.